Hey, welcome back to Lessons in Leadership. We are a company and a platform dedicated to equipping leaders with the tools and resources needed to help them become the best versions of themselves. We believe that leaders are made and not born, and we believe that if you partner with us, that we can turn anyone into a leader regardless of their current situation. All right, let's get into it. So, what I want to talk about today is a slight continuation of our four pillars process. For those of y'all that have not watched those episodes, I would implore you to go back and watch, listen. So, the four pillars process, real quick, is our framework that we use whenever we go in and try to help consult or turn around a company. It's very simple. It's a way to categorize, to get all the departments and everyone in an organization working together, fully aligned, and using the same language and categorizing issues um, according to how they fall into the framework. So we got people, the people that do the actual work. We got the process by which the work gets done, the product and or service, which is the actual offering that we bring to the marketplace. And then, of course, promotion. And that's how we make the general public aware of what we have to offer. So it's a real quick overview. Don't want to waste a lot of time on that. I'd rather you go back and watch and get fully familiar with that framework. So, what I want to talk about today is how we go in and do a really quick, down and dirty assessment of someone's issues, depending on how we do. So, we also have a um, Fit, Fearless, and Free, which is an individual um, program that we use to get someone fully aligned. So, as an individual, you need to have your physiology or your physical aspect, your fitness. You need to have your mental fearlessness to be able to go out and face fears and overcome issues that are challenging you to kind of stay where you're at or be stuck. And then, of course, you need to be free. So free, um, you know, spiritually to grow and self actualize, and then also financially free. And that's what that fearless and free framework does, is get an individual there. So when we go in to tackle an organization, we're looking at it from an individual level, and then how those individuals form an organization and how the organization itself as an entity works. So this is what we do. Typically, if we go into an organization, we're dealing with executives first because we want to get very familiar with the executive team. We want to learn and understand how they make decisions, what their mission, vision, their values, and everything. Because what they espel filters down to the people under them. So it really starts at the top. Now we do get very antiquated and familiar with the hourly associates, the sort of bottom level people, because they're the ones that are usually interacting with the customers, creating the products for the customers, doing everything that actually more or less puts the money in the bank for the company. And oftentimes it's those individuals that are the one and only representative of a company that the customer will ever meet. They don't meet the CEO, they don't meet the CFO, even though those executive contributions are a huge contributor to overall success. So when we go in, whether it's an individual in our Fit, Fearless, and Free, or it's an organization that we're working with in our four pillars framework, we're still looking at an individual. First thing we want to do, I'm going to give you a sort of a case study. So we'll go in and we'll assess what the issue is that we think is causing the most problems, right? So sort of that 80-20 rule. What's the few things that contribute the most uh, problems to the organization? So if our CEO says, well, our biggest issue is that we can't get people to get on board and make these changes. Or another good example is I have this executive and he's extremely aggressive and easily agitated. He's a high performer. He does extremely well. He's manages a large portfolio or big book of business for us. He's got deep ties within the community and deep ties within our clients. So we want to retain him. We don't want to lose him, but his behavior is very detrimental to the overall success of the company because he causes a lot of um, inner turmoil within the company, right? He's always arguing with human resources. He's always arguing with his coworkers. He creates a lot of strife within the C-suite, but he also gets results. So we want to fix this. So typically, I'll get the perspective from the CEO. I'll talk to some of the other C-suite executives and kind of get an idea of what's going on. And then I go in and we have a session. So this is sort of a quick example of how that session might go. The first and foremost thing I'm trying to do is I'm asking questions with a blank slate. So I'm going in to assess the issue from this individual. And even though I've received feedback from coworkers, I'm going in assuming nothing because I've said so many times how our inner thoughts and perspectives and biases convolute information. We filter out information based off what we think we already know. So what I want to do is go in there and just be fully attentive and listen. While I'm listening, though, I'm listening for specific things, indicators that they may be giving out, indicators of their preferred style of learning, their preferred style of communication. Are they more into physical, like I can feel this, I have a sense, what type of language are they using? Do they say, I see this is what I envision, I can picture this? Are they saying I can hear it, it sounds like? So I'm looking for those words that give good indications of what their preferred style of listening and communication is, so that I can build rapport. Rapport building is one of the number one things because I need to quickly get this individual engaged and on him or her on my side, right? They need to be able to trust me and we need to have rapport so that we can work together. Once I do that, once I've kind of built that rapport, I'm then continuing to listen for things that are indications of things that they have, the biases or the filters that they use. So if they're constantly saying things that give me an idea that they say always or every time, never. So like those ultimatums, I'm listening. So then I want to challenge those, and I can challenge it now that I have a rapport by saying, is it always? Like they never do that. And so what I'm doing is two things. I'm chipping away at that actual, written in stone never. Like, is it really never? And almost 99.9% of the time they'll say, well, you're right. Sometimes, but so then I'm slowly starting to chip away at that facade and that mental structure that they have. And that's very important because if we want to rebuild something, we first need to sort of chip away at it, right? We need to reform it. We have to kind of break it down. Similar to what, the military does in boot camp. They sort of break an individual down so they can rebuild them better and stronger. And then also, once I get them questioning, their own framework, it's much easier for me then to start kind of reprogramming, if you will. So once we get that, then we start to really get down to the core problems. And so with the core problems I'm starting to listen to, let's say that they have an issue with always blowing up and going off or sending out rude emails or whatever it is. Lots of times I find that that's an insecurity problem, right? So maybe there's an issue that we need to address if the CEO isn't making people feel confident and secure in their jobs. So he's thinking that he's sort of his reason for going off is a protective measure, that he's trying to protect his territory. He's trying to protect his job. This is just a generalization, but we're using this. So first we need to address that. Why do they feel that way, right? So the first thing I want to do is what I call disassociation. So I want to take the individual and I want to have them disassociate from the problem, disassociate from the behavior, whatever it is. And disassociation just means sort of remove. So, and I'll often use, you'll see my hands, I'll often use a lot of nonverbal hands, because I'll say, so let's separate, and let's say, let's look at you over here, but let's put the problem here. So I'm literally separating it with my hands and doing a physical gesture to say let's separate it. And let's look at the problem. All right. So what that's doing is, it's giving him more comfort, or her more comfort, saying that we're not looking at you like you're something wrong. We're looking at the behavior. So that's one thing. But also, I'm getting him to disassociate some, to create some separation, and view it as something different, because now he can change, or she can change the behavior or the outcome, right? So now we've done that. So we've disassociated, and we would continue to use that as I'm talking, like, so this over here, so this, the problem, and making it very clear. And a lot of times, if you'll notice, I started here and I'm moving my hands. I'm creating more and more physical separation between the two, right? And I'm continuing to do that every time I say him or her is over here and the problem is over here. And I'm widening that distance. So I'm getting them anchored into them over here and the problem over here. And so then a lot of times I'll also be talking about the problem. So I'm looking almost basketball shaped so they can really get a good picture. But as we talk, I'm also moving my hands in and creating a smaller and smaller till I get down to almost like a softball. So I've literally shrank the problem down as we're talking. But now that I've created that disassociation, what I also want to do is compartmentalize. So compartmentalize literally means like put it in a compartment. Like, could we take that problem and put it in a drawer of your desk, right? So now I've created several things. I'm talking, but I've also created these mental pictures of separating the problem, shrinking the problem. Now we're going to take that problem, we're going to put it somewhere else, right? So we're putting it in a desk or putting it somewhere. We're compartmentalizing. So now what I've got them to do in their mind is separate themselves and shrink the problem down to where it's more manageable, and show that we have the power to move the problem and to put it somewhere, right? So if you can put something up on the shelf, because that's a lot of language I'll use, like, let's table this, let's take this offline, let's put this aside for now. So now I've got all this going on in their mind, so it's a lot easier for them to look at it. This is what we call enlightenment, or transcending, when you're seeing something from a different view. That's literally, I've got them to transcend the problem and look at this from a different level. So then what I'll do is, now that we've dissociated, we've compartmentalized, now I want to come up with a good outcome, right? So what's our desired outcome? Our desired outcome is to resolve and stop the conflict that they're causing. So we want to find better behavior. We want to, so, what's your desired goal? His desired goal is to show that he's competent, or to get these results. He's very result oriented. So then we'll say, okay, well, this is the result we want. So now we start to come up with using his style, right? He wants to be result oriented and achieve the result. So now the result is, this is what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve you getting your point across without coming across as rude or hurting people's feelings or being overly aggressive. So now we start to identify different behavior that would achieve a similar result. Now in this process, we start to look at, okay, now we've separated the problem. Now we're working on the individual. So the individual, I'll say, well, let's look at some stuff. What's your overall goal? Well, I want to move up in the company, or I want to get paid more money. So if that's your goal, do you think this behavior necessarily achieves that? And I'll have them do it. I call it a downward arrow. But so if you continue to do this behavior, what might happen? And I got to be serious sometimes, because I got to say, hey, look, I wouldn't be here working with you if there wasn't an issue. So we need to be honest. There's obviously an issue. While you're an asset to the company, you're also a liability, and we need to address it, right? So I'll be pretty straightforward. But if you continue this behavior, what might happen? Okay. And I'll have them go down, well, I make enemies. Okay. They might turn against me. This is, I might end up fired, right? So we get down, that's sort of their core fear too. So the fear of getting fired both can stop the problem, but also create the problem, right? That's why he's doing it in the first place, because he's trying to save his position and embed himself in there and say that, I'm the one that gets things done. So now we get down to the root cause. This is the fear that he has. This is what causes the problem. This is what might happen if you continue the problem. So we start to associate, get a different association or a different perspective that this is what the problem's causing, right? You're looking at the benefit you're getting. Now let's start looking at the problem or the potential ramifications, right? This is where I'll do a lot of, some people call it I think Tony Robbins, one of the most famous people, I think it's called the Dickens method, which is, like the Christmas story. What happens if you don't change your behavior? But I also do a social media type one for younger people. But what I basically do is have people sort of transcend the current, look into the future and say, if I continue this behavior, is this behavior going to get me to where I want to go, or is it going to get me further away? So I'll have them sort of go into the future, look at, okay, if I continue it, this is what is likely to happen. If I stop, this is what is likely to happen. And I'll say, okay, let's go and look 10 years in the future and then start to look backwards. And so it's giving them two things. It's changing their visual perspective, right? Because now they're looking at it from sort of a second or third party. They're looking at themselves as that behavior. It's also getting them the perspective of, well, you're right. If I continue this, I'm going to burn a lot of bridges. I'm not going to have the people backing me that I want. And, all these things. So it's giving them a different perspective. It's giving them a longer view too, to say, hey, okay, that's right. So I need to stop this behavior. Then what I do is I have them work backwards and say, okay, if I change these things, change these things, change these things, and they're seeing how they're getting that benefit, they're also compressing time backwards. And now we're in the present. We're at the present time right now. So now we've disassociated the problem, we've put the problem aside, we're addressing the individual, and we've given them a longer view, right? A different perspective and a longer view of how that behavior is not getting them the desired outcome, and how they can change things right now to get that desired outcome that we've already envisioned. So already they're getting different associations and different ideas, right? That's all we're trying to do is change their perspective. That's what enlightenment is. You've changed your perspective. It was dark, now it's light, and you have a completely different view. It's a different perspective. Then we go in and we start to, this is when I use a lot of other modalities. I might go in, I'm big on hypnosis, but I don't have to necessarily swing a watch. I can achieve a lot of the same stuff just talking. So as I'm doing all this, I'm literally talking to them and creating different states and different almost trance states, depending on how I want to use certain things. So I'm very language focused. So I'll say, like, so now that you've chosen to stop now, and you can change your behavior, and that change may come now, that change may come later, but when that change does come, so I'm using lots of language that, like, getting into all their subconscious mind, getting into their conscious mind, getting confusion with some of the stuff, and they get confused, and people start listening more when they get confused, because they're like, wait, what did they say? I'm using all these things, and it's sort of verbal hypnosis, right? It's to get them, okay, now I'm associating something different. And that's the whole thing of therapy that we do. The whole thing of working with someone is just to get them to see things differently. And to understand that just because they have a thought doesn't mean that that's them. They can think that they need to do something. They don't have to. They don't have to act on that and send out a bad email. So now what we're going to do is get deep into it and say, so when you're using those, when you feel the need to lash out or to fight back, you can begin to realize that that fear or that anxiety that causes those emotions really is a very valuable thing. It's a alarm system, or it's a guard dog that's alerting you that there's a problem. And instead of seeing others as the problem, you can begin now to see your behavior as a problem, as a potential saboteur, or a potential way that to sabotage your goal of becoming the CEO. And as you're becoming, you realize that it's important who you're being right now, because who you are being and how you're acting, and now the decisions that you're choosing to make currently are affecting who you're becoming. And all that language is getting them to understand, you're right, what I'm doing has a benefit, but I've been listening to the guard dog wrong. Instead of attacking the other, I need to see that this is an issue. Okay, I'm about to blow up, I'm about to get mad. That those feelings, I can now see them as a guard dog telling me not to go off. Right? Okay, I need to take a second. And we'll also instill things like better behavior. So what can you do to calm down? And the biggest thing is getting people to be cognitive and aware of their mental process, so they can see that, oh, that's not me, that's a thought I had that I need to go off, or I need to fight back. I don't have to act on that thought. They're continuing to reach a higher level of consciousness now they're conscious of their thoughts, and that they are more than just their thought, that they are actually someone having a thought, and they can think about the thought before they act on it. That's literally therapy right there. That's it. We took the problem away, separated it from the individual, got it smaller, compartmentalized it, showed them they have the power to move it, to take it out, to use it when they need to. So that power is good, right? Maybe he needs to be able to fight back and push back, but maybe he can do it in a defensive manner to defend others. So instead of seeing him as this barbarian that's attacking his team, he's the defender, and we need to get him to use that, you know, power or whatever to help defend his people, or to help go out and conquer other things, and grow the company. So now we've changed him from someone that's insecure fighting back to someone that is a protector. We've literally changed his character. And now that we get into the character phase and say, now we're changing your character in this story that you're the author of, that you're the storyteller, right? And you're the main character. Now we want to instill character traits. And those character traits are going to basically be what you live and die by. So you're going to be honest, integrity, you're going to be kind. We start to give those in. And this might be a multi-session process, but once we give them those, we say, this is what you're going to live by. Every action that you do, you want to assess if this is if it falls in line with what you've said is your character traits. And oftentimes we get them to use idols or people. So who's the CEO? What jobs, who's someone that has a job that you want to have? What are their character traits? And getting them to see things through that light. And then we create that for them, and we say, okay, now you need to adhere to this at all cost. If you're going to be kind, courteous, if you're going to be protective, and it gets them to think now. So when they go into any situation, am I living by my character traits that I defined? This is probably the same thing that would help somebody with anything, depression, anxiety, any and all, because all those are just ways that they're viewing things, right? So if you're having anxiety, you're probably viewing things through the future, something that might happen, could happen. You're creating false scenarios based off of a perspective, right? So the physical world is just what it is. There's cars, there's people, they're just physical things. We give them a perspective. We have thoughts, and we allow those thoughts to come in, and we attach emotions to them, we attach all these things. But if you're having anxiety, it's probably because you're trying to be a fortune teller into the future. If you're having depression, you're probably thinking about the past. You're having remorse, regret, So you're thinking about past thoughts, or you're thinking about, poor me, oh, this is so bad. It's literally just thought. It's the thought that's causing all of that. So the same thing that's causing these individuals, like a CEO or the CFO or this executive example we're using, they're just an individual having thoughts. It's all the same as a unemployed, depressed person, a chronically anxious person. It's just different ends of that spectrum, right? But the executive's experiencing some sort of anger, anxiety, all these things. So we just have to address it the same we would with anybody else. We just tend to specialize in business related and high performance related um, people. That's our bread and butter. That's our demographic that we focus on. But if you can use this, you can use it on yourself. You can use it on anybody. It's literally separate the person from the problem, get them to understand how they can push it down. We do that through asking challenging questions.